Give me 1 second. All right. We're good to go there. Shelley, are you letting everybody in?
Yes, I'm admitting everyone now.
All right, let me change the view here to speaker. And let me hide all non-video participants. Oh. Shelley, I think you're pinned or something like that.
I'm pinned.
For some reason, the logo is up instead of whoever's talking. So,
Okay, I'll work on that.
all right. Well, welcome everybody. As usual, this is one of those meetings where I get to officiate until the very part. So I just want to let everybody know before we get started that Spanish interpretation is available for this meeting. If you're using a Mac or PC, click on the globe at the bottom of your Zoom screen. If you're on an iPhone or Android, it is in the options menu. Hay interpretación en español disponible para esta reunión. Si está usado una Mac o una PC, haga clic en el globo en la parte inferior de la planta de Zoom. Si está en iPhone or Android, está en el menú de opciones. All right. With that said, the time is now 6:06, and so I would like to call the meeting to order. If we could all stand for the pledge, or at least recite the pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag, United States of America.
United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation,
under God,
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, it's a lot harder when you're hearing other people and they're a little bit behind you trying to keep up with them. So at this point, I'm going to do the organizational meeting. So I'd like to have a roll call, please.
Ellen Wheeler.
Laura Blakely.
Devin Conley.
Laura Ramirez Berman.
Christopher Shane.
All right, let the record show that all 5 trustees are present and available. Second, I am seeking an approval of the organizational agenda.
I make a motion to approve the organizational agenda as presented.
Second.
All right. Oh, now that it's been moved by Trustee Conley and seconded by, was that Trustee Blakely?
Mm-hmm.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? We'll count you, Ms. Berman, Trustee Berman, as a part of it. So now I need to do item C, which is installation of elected board members. So I will start, I'm going to go in alphabetical order. So we will start off with Ms. Trustee Berman. Are you ready?
Yes.
All right, here we go. Just repeat after me. I, Laura Ramirez Berman,
I, Laura Ramirez Berman,
do solemnly swear or affirm
do solemnly swear or affirm
that I support and defend the Constitution of the United States
that I support and defend the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California
and the Constitution of the State of California
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the Constitution
that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the Constitution
of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California,
of the United States and to the Constitution of California,
that I take this obligation freely
that I take this obligation freely
without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion,
without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion,
and that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties
and I will faithfully discharge the duties
upon which I am about to enter.
upon which I'm about to enter.
All right. Congratulations and welcome aboard. We have a paper that you'll need to sign at some point. So And maybe one day when we're not in the world of COVID, we'll bring cupcakes back for everybody.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
All right, next up, Laura Blakely, you ready?
I'm ready.
All right, here we go. I guess I could say I state your name. So I state your name,
I, Laura Blakely,
do solemnly swear or affirm
do solemnly swear or affirm
that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California
that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of California,
that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California,
that I take this obligation freely
that I take this obligation freely
without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion,
without any mental hesitation or reservation or purpose of hesitation. Evasion
is all good. And that I will well and faithfully discharge
that I will well and faithfully discharge
the duties upon which I am about to enter.
the duties upon which I am about to enter.
All right. So congratulations. Welcome back for your second term. You two will need to at some point come in and sign a sheet of paper just that we can send out to the county. All right, Mr. Chang, are you ready?
Yes, I am.
All right. I state your name.
I, Christopher Chain,
Do solemnly swear or affirm
do solemnly swear and affirm
that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California
I swear to defend the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
and I will bear full true faith and allegiance
to the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California,
to the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of California,
that I take this obligation freely
and that I take this obligation freely
without any mental reservation
without any mental reservation
or purpose of evasion,
or purpose of invasion,
and that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties
while well and faithfully discharge the duties
upon which I'm about to enter.
upon the duties which I'm about to enter.
You got it. Congratulations.
Yeah.
All right. Like I said, you two have something that you have to come in and sign, but let's keep it moving. All right. So we're going to move on to item D, which is the election of officers. So we have three positions that we need to fill. We need to fill a president, a vice president, as well as a clerk. I will open it up so that I can turn it over to someone else after you make the election of president. And so I am now calling, we can go directly to the vote, or if you feel like you want to have a conversation before we get started, I'll let you have a conversation, get started, and then we can go to the vote. So this is your chance to choose.
I'm comfortable going directly to the vote. I don't know about my colleagues.
I think what we need is nominations.
Yep, that's coming, but I don't know if anybody wanted to, because you haven't had the opportunity to share that you're interested or any of that. So this would have been your opportunity to say it, but since it seems we're ready to go to nominations, I will take nominations for the position of president.
I'd like to nominate Devin Conley for president.
Second.
All right. On the nomination of president for trustee Conley by Lori Blakely and seconded by Christopher Chang. All those in favor?
Excuse me. So I'm planning on voting in favor, but according to process, you need to ask if there are other nominations.
Okay, are there any other nominations?
Okay, the nominations are closed.
All right. With that said, can I get a vote? There's a motion on the floor. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, it passes unanimously, and I officially turn my role over to you, Trustee Conley. Have fun.
Thank you very much, Superintendent
And,
Rudolph.
and congratulations.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
All right, so we will move on to Vice President. Would trustees like to discuss the position before making nominations?
I would like to say I would be really interested in Trustee Laura Berman being vice president. I think I found that's a good position for a new trustee to jump into, and especially with her background, should serve us board well in that position.
So I'll chime in here. I'd like to propose Laura Blakely as vice president for a lot of reasons, and I can say them now or later, and then suggest that we nominate Laura Berman as clerk so that she is part of the officer group, but doesn't have as many responsibilities on her shoulders.
Would you like to go ahead and share your reasoning, Trustee Wheeler?
Yes, and I provided this reasoning at the organizational meeting last year, which is we're in a pretty unique situation in Mountain View where not only are we working on school district, just traditional organizational school district kind of work, we're also working with the city of Mountain View regarding development. And what we have found, or what I think is so, is when the president and vice president of our board are particularly knowledgeable about the development proposals and can make particularly credible testimony to the city of Mountain View, I think that's a good thing. So Board President Conley, I know that you are in that position, and Trustee Blakely is in that position as well. So she has been testifying on our behalf about these issues for a long time. She's very, very knowledgeable and brings a lot of expertise to that. So I think she adds an extra, extra bonus to the officer corps. So that's why I would like, my preference would be to have Trustee Blakely become vice president.
Trustee Chang?
I would support Trustee Wheeler's suggestion. But I would have a question is, I think it would be well served for the board to follow the Mountain View City Council's precedent of kind of having set rotations of who becomes board president next. So I think Trustee Wheeler's suggestion of Trustee Blakely as vice president and then Trustee Berman as clerk would be fantastic. But I personally, I would like to see then kind of a predictable process of then Trustee Blakely would be president next, and then Trustee Berman would step into vice president and then into president next. I think that takes away some of the personal, it makes it, I think that Trustee Caldonado once gave a really good speech talking about how you really build a relationship with the superintendent by having everyone rotate into that position. And it just kind of makes things very neutral. And I think it has served the city well, so.
Trustee Wheeler?
Yeah, so and I make this speech every year for 17 years. I think it's a strength of our district that we have flexibility regarding who the board wants as officers. So every year it seems like there's one person who, for one reason or another, is more appropriate for that point in time. And so instead of having just a predictable lockstep, this person is expected to be the next role. I think it's a good thing for a school district to have that flexibility. And I mentioned, and this was not true, 10 years ago when we were being asked to give testimony to Mountain View City Council about development. But I think Trustee Blakely, as I said, is particularly well suited. I'm hoping that within a couple years, Trustee Ramirez Berman is going to get enough information and comfort level that she could also testify on our behalf to Mountain View City Council and to you too, Trustee Chang, that at some point in time, I would hope that we would all feel comfortable with you representing the board at a city council meeting. But I wouldn't say that that's, none of these things are guarantees. So, and I'll say one more thing, people have asked me, so should I be president? And, to your point, Trustee Chang, I don't need an additional experience with Superintendent Rudolph because I've had that experience. And I think it's good for Superintendent Rudolph to have that experience with new board members. But I don't think any of that happens with a lockstep progression.
Trustee Berman, did you have a comment?
Yes, I appreciate the nomination. I think Trustee Wheeler, you bring up some good points about the reasoning behind Laura Blakely serving as the vice president. And I would be comfortable serving as the clerk as well. I'm confident in my ability to do either role, but I think the reasons you have presented make sense.
Are there any further comments? Trustee Blakely.
I just want to say I'm confident in Trustee Berman's ability to serve well, but in my personal experience, I was clerk the first year that I was elected. And even though I thought I was going to be pretty familiar with things, I was glad that that was the role I had during my first year. Because there's a big learning curve. I'm still learning. This is going to be my 5th year and I still have a lot to learn. But I'm not comfortable right now agreeing to the sort of lockstep. It might be that Trustee Berman is very ready to serve as president next year. I think we've got 12 months in between now and then to see how everything unfolds. And I'd be very happy when we have a retreat to maybe talk more about some of these norms. But I also think the city council doesn't always do the lockstep. I remember there was at least one time when they didn't. So it may be, generally followed, but it's not, like Trustee Wheeler said, that there's no guarantee. And sometimes you have to be able to be a little bit flexible, given circumstances.
Are there any further comments from trustees? I will add, I would be equally confident in Trustee Blakely or Trustee Berman serving as vice president. I think you are both phenomenal trustees and quite capable of filling the position, but I'm happy to support what appears to be the majority to have Trustee Blakely as vice president. I know you will serve us well in that position. And I'm in agreement that I think a lockstep, as appealing as it sounds in terms of kind of distributing time with the superintendent, I actually think that it is something that derives from the moment that we're in when the transition takes place and the circumstances that we're in. When I look at other school boards throughout the county, I don't see an automatic rotation. So I'm not in favor of kind of a guaranteed rotation, but I do think that everyone on this board is quite capable of doing the work and serving in any position. With that said, would anybody like to do we need to make an official nomination again, or has it already been made? Okay, yeah. Would anybody like to make an official nomination? Yes, Trustee Wheeler.
Yeah, and I do believe we need to do these one at a time and not, even though it sounds like everybody's agreeing. So I move that we nominate trustee Laura Blakely to be next year or this year's vice president of the board.
Second.
Are there any other nominations?
Oh.
Oh, that was seconded by trustee Chang. Thank
Sorry.
you. Okay. Are there any other nominations? All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Let the record reflect that trustee Blakely has been elected as vice president of the Mountain View Wisman School Board by a unanimous vote. And now we will open it up for discussion about the clerk position. Would anybody like to have discussion about that item, or would we like to move to a nomination? It does not appear that there is discussion about the item. Would somebody like to make a nomination?
I'd like to nominate Laura Ramirez Berman for the position of clerk.
Thank you, trustee Blakely. Are there any other nominations? Okay, all those in favor?
Wait,
of-
somebody has to second it.
Oh, yes. Second. I think I'm allowed to second, yes?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. All those in favor of trustee Laura Ramirez Berman serving as clerk? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you. Let the record reflect that with a unanimous vote, Laura Ramirez Berman has been elected as the clerk of the Mountain View Wisman School Board.
Congratulations.
Congratulations to everyone.
Thank you.
All right, so moving on to item 2D or 2E, we are going to look at board representative assignments. And I believe everyone received this document from Dr. Rudolph ahead of time with the different roles that our board representatives fill by attending organizations and committees within the district. We currently have a citizens oversight committee, and I think there has been some back and forth that there is actually a parcel tax committee as well as a bond oversight committee. Is that correct, Dr. Rudolph?
Correct. And the Citizens Oversight Committee is actually, I think, a county level committee. I don't know if it's technically active. I think every year this comes up as an issue and someone says it hasn't met or something like that. So I'm actually not, when I looked at this, the bond oversight committee needs to be on here, but I mistook it for the Citizens Oversight Committee.
Okay, so bond committee, parcel tax committee, two separate things?
Yep, parcel tax is already on here. Bond is definitely on here. And then I'm not sure about the Citizens Oversight Committee. Maybe Trustee Wheeler may know a little bit more
Yeah,
about the history.
so I think what there's a little confusion on this list, and I made this explanation last time. There's a committee, a district committee that's through the county, and every school board in the county can vote for members of that committee. And the way it's phrased on this paper is one person votes, but the way we've always done it and the way I always modeled it when I was president is we discuss it as a board, and then we'd come to an agreement. But it's complicated because that vote is not actually relevant to the actual committee right now. So the committee is an organizational committee, and there are 2 members in each supervisorial district on that committee. And so there's 10 members plus an at-large member. And there are rotating election cycles for this committee. But I am actually the member of that committee, and I've been the member of that committee for about 3 years, something like that. My term will expire or come up for renewal next year. So I need to decide what I want to do. But the reason I say that, and the other person from our supervisorial district is Mandy Lowell, who's a former school board member from Palo Alto. The reason I bring this up is the thing that's on our list there is, you know, it isn't meaningful.
Okay. Thank you, Trustee Wheeler. I'm going to, so that's very helpful. I'm going to go down the list and read through the things on the list and make sure we know who has been serving in that position. And then maybe we can have a discussion about, do people want to rotate off? Are there things that people are particularly interested in? The next item on the list is the Community Health Awareness Council, CHAC, and it is a voting member. And I believe right now it is Trustee Blakely who has been our representative.
Yes,
Okay.
I have been, and I'm very interested in continuing to be.
Okay, thank you, Trustee Blakely. And then we have the County Committee on District Organization.
See, that's what I was just talking about.
That's what you're talking about. That's not the Citizens Oversight Committee. Okay, so we're gonna strike County Committee on District Organization from the list for now. The District Advisory Committee, who has been serving on that?
So every year for the past couple years, Trustee Blakely and I have both said we wanted to serve on that committee, and we were supposedly co-representatives, but I've never received an agenda, so I've never attended those meetings. I am still interested in being a representative to that, you know, sole or co, but regardless, and this is an example, Dr. Rudolph has been better about this than some other superintendents, but it's good for all of the trustees to know when all of the meetings are being held so we can attend if we want to. But anyway, I am interested in being a representative to that committee.
Trustee Blakely?
I am too, but I think that, you know, it might be a good way for some of the newer trustees to learn issues are going on. I think I've attended like 2 or 3 of them, but I don't think this past year I had attended any. And I thought you and I had synchronized, Ellen, but I don't really recall. But it's basically, I mean, perhaps Dr. Rudolph can explain what the purpose of the committee is so that in case trustees Chang and Berman aren't familiar with it, they have a sense.
Yep, so every school site council elects a representative to sit on DAC. And so DAC meets, sometimes they meet quarterly, sometimes they meet by the trimester, sometimes they meet a little bit more frequently, depends on what the issues are. Typically we run things by them. So we had one meeting earlier this year where we talked about reopening and get their feedback in terms of what that looks like. And other times they've, for instance, they selected the members who sat on the EPTF. I believe that they're going to be, or they didn't select, they provided a recommendation based off of the applications. We plan on using them for the Montaloma Task Force, Fencing Task Force, to select the community members as well as parents who fill out the applications. They have made recommendations about boundaries. They have made recommendations about enrollment priorities. So typically it is just another sounding board that I use to help inform a decision. Even middle school schedules, they have weighed in. So they typically have the opportunity to weigh in on some pretty large topics. And because they're from school site council and they are elected, it sort of gives them a different take as opposed to, you know, ELAC and PTA tends to be, not that they're not on these also, but they tend to be parents who are interested in that particular facet, whereas these individuals tend to really provide some insight about how the district operates.
Okay. The next item on here is the MVEF Foundation Observer. It's a non-voting member. I have been serving in this position for the last year. I have enjoyed it. I have learned a great deal. As an incoming board president, I am happy to rotate off if there is somebody else who would be interested in serving for this appointment. One of the great things is that every time I go, Dr. Rudolph gives an update that might be before a board meeting or in between them. And so you get some of the latest information in detail, and you get to hear how parents react to it as well. So if somebody would like to step up and take on that role, I would be happy to rotate off. Then the position after that is the PTA, the Los Altos Mountain View PTA Council. I have also been serving on the Los Altos Mountain View PTA Council. I really, really love attending those meetings, and I recommend that every trustee attend those meetings if they're available. Our PTA presidents also have their own in-district meeting every month as well, and that is open for us to attend. I would be happy to continue serving on the PTA Council. Whichever board member is serving there is a voting member, but also does a presentation at each meeting to the PTA Council about business that is going on in the district. So it would be a bit of a natural fit as the board president to be able to do that. But if someone's really interested, I'm happy, to entertain possibly switching over. And then the last position on here is the Santa Clara County School Boards Association representative, which I believe is currently Trustee Wheeler. And Trustee Wheeler, is that something you're, oh, yes, Trustee Blakely.
No, go. I was just going to say we bond oversight and parcel tax oversight also.
Yeah.
And,
Sorry.
and
Sorry, Dr.
And
Rudolph?
did I
DLAC.
skip DLAC?
DLAC also, yeah.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Well, Trustee Wheeler, did you have a comment about the School Board Association first?
Sure. I think for that committee, it's beneficial to have long-time contacts with the other people around the county. But what we have had in the past and what other school districts have is you can have co-representatives. So I'd be happy to be a co-rep, or if people say you've done it too long, give it somebody else a turn, that's okay too. I will say it's a voting position, but for the last many years, there hasn't been anything of substance that has required, any sort of contentious vote. So, it's not a real meaty position. And I'll also say that, so one, just like PTA Council, anybody can go, and I encourage anybody to go. And now that, or at least while they are virtual, they are easy to attend, because otherwise they're at the county office, which takes, 45 minutes to get there at night. And the other thing is, recently, within the last 6 months, the Santa Clara County School Boards Association has been holding either weekly or bi-monthly kind of informal meetings of the organization and members. And we've got one coming up next week. They're very, very helpful as kind of a networking kind of event. So those are two different things, the night meeting, the monthly meeting where you're a voting member and you're voting on minutes and budget, that kind of thing. And those are always really good meetings. But anyway, yes, I would like to continue to be our rep, but if somebody else has, would like to join in or, have me rotate off, that's okay.
And I would add the meetings during the day that have been happening every week or two, Superintendent DeWan usually attends and gives an update to board members across the county about what is going on, especially with the pandemic. So it is extremely useful to attend them if you're able to. And we usually have a question and answer session with her. I'm going to loop back to the District English Language Advisory Committee. I believe Trustee Gutierrez was serving on that committee. Dr. Rudolph, would you like to describe the work of the committee?
So this is comprised of members from our English Language Advisory Committees that are at each school. They select the representative. The meetings are ran by one of the members of DLAC. They're not ran by staff. However, staff does do presentations and seeks guidance and feedback. Again, oftentimes we will confer with them about actions that we are doing across the district. And so it is another sounding board that we have that represents a pretty good constituency of the district. So, and it is just so everybody knows, it's primarily functions in Spanish. And so typically the interpreters are there for you and not for the members who are part of DLAC.
Thank you. And then we also have, we have a bond oversight committee for Measure T. Who is currently serving on that?
I was.
Trustee Blakely. Well, when we get to discussion, and then we have a Parcel Tax Committee, which I believe Trustee Berman may already be serving on, but not as a board representative. Okay, so you've had experience with that committee. And Trustee Blakely?
Yeah, no, I was the
You're
oversight
the board
person,
representative.
but I think Laura didn't attend the last meeting because now there's a conflict in her voting role. She was sort of disinvited because our role is oversight.
Yeah, that's right.
All right, I believe we've listed everything. If people would like to discuss roles that they're interested in.
Question.
Yes, Trustee Chang.
A question. In the previous board meeting, there was discussion about the diversity and equity as a kind of word. And maybe that's still too early for us to kind of have us talk about somebody to represent that. Maybe that's to come. And a second question is, have we ever had a board representative for any committee for special education? And I don't know if Trustee Wheeler has any history about.
So I attended those meetings when I can, but we don't have a formal representative. And I'll say that I've been attending those meetings for many, many years, and I've never known any other school board trustee from any district that attended the meetings.
Trustee Blakely.
I just wanted to clarify, as I'm looking at this list, these things say non-voting member. And I think when we're a non-voting member, really that is I'm sorry, I just lost the term. We're not members. We're just there as a board observers.
Yes.
We're really just board observers.
Yeah.
And so, you know, to your point about the special ed committee or any others, I mean, you know, maybe we want to have a board observer. I don't see any problem with that, but I also think that it's not necessary. You know, if it's of interest, board members can attend any meeting as long as they're not Brown Act type violations. So we're probably encouraged to do some of that.
And to your first question, Trustee Chang, I think because the Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Belonging Committee has not been formally established yet, we haven't discussed, we don't even know if the composition is going to be 1 or 2 board members to that committee. So it's coming. Yes, Dr. Rudolph.
It will be, I know Mrs. Henderson plans on bringing that back with the committee, but it will be 1 board member that we're seeking. So if you want to go ahead and add that to the committees, you can go ahead and appoint yourself.
Okay, if trustees are comfortable with that. So are there comments, discussion? Our new members, what are you interested in? Trustee Berman?
I just want to share that everyone is frozen to me on my end, so I'll fix that once we go into closed session, but I can hear everybody. I am interested in DLAC and representing the board in the DLAC meetings. And I'm also interested, oh, you're back. Also interested in the Mountain View Education Foundation, but would be happy to hear if anyone else is interested in that one. But both of those sound appealing to me.
I had interest in the bond oversight. I was really interested in the bond when we had the Measure G. Be interested in getting involved in Measure T more. And then, and when you were suggesting a secondary for the District Advisory Committee, I would be interested in being a backup, or kind of if there's somebody who wanted to be the primary for that. I think Trustee Blakely's advice about that resonated with me. Yeah.
So I'll comment about that. So we talked about representatives and co-representatives. And when we go beyond that, beyond co-representatives, anybody, like we said, anybody can attend. So there isn't really a backup. It's, so a message goes out, I can't go to this meeting. Can anybody attend? That's kind of the process. But a reason to have co-representatives is if one can't attend, then hopefully the other one can.
Trustee Blakely.
Well, and so I know I was on a bunch of these bond oversight and parcel tax oversight. Bond oversight is something that, I mean, having led the troops to get that thing passed, along with Cleve and others, RV, I'm really interested in that one as well. But if it's possible to have two people, or if I can just attend and have Chris be the primary observer, if it's not a Brown Act, if there's just two of us, I'm comfortable with that. But CHAC is the one that I really, really, really would love to remain on.
I definitely value your experience with the bond and parcel tax oversight committees that you have served on in the past, Trustee Blakely. And then also, I mean, Measure T inside out, upside down and backwards. So I would be happy to support having co-representatives on that bond committee. If other trustees are amenable to that, with Trustee Chang and Trustee Blakely.
Mm-hmm.
Does that sound?
I'm just happy to come. Actually, I don't need to have a position. I think I can do what Trustee Blakely said too. I can just go and attend and listen. So, because I do think there's a benefit in having just one name, just so the public knows who's that person. So I'm comfortable just attending that committee. It would support Trustee Blakely as the person that people know is a representative.
Okay.
That's mostly what the board, the board observer does, though, is, I don't do a lot of talking.
You report out to the board about what's going on. Yes, Trustee Chang.
So you rolled the process for the diversity and equity. So I wanted to know your opinion on whether you're intending to serve on that. That is something I'm really excited about as well. I'm very excited about your work, but that's your baby. So I just, do you know your?
It is definitely my baby. I will say it's something that I would love to serve on, but I also know that Trustee Berman has had a significant amount of experience working with equity initiatives and the National Equity Project. So if Trustee Berman is interested in serving on that, I would be happy to cede my position to her, because I think she has more training and background in it than I do. If not, I would dearly love to serve on that committee. And I'm networked with other trustees throughout the county whose school boards have recently created similar structures in the last year or two. So there's a good network for all of us to draw on as we do the work. Trustee Berman?
I think that I think it is your baby, like Trustee Chang mentioned. I am fine with you representing the board on that committee. Can I come in as an observer to watch the meetings? Is this one of those meetings where I would be able to join and just maybe not participate, just observe?
I believe so, Dr. Rudolph.
Any board member can observe any meeting, but you can't talk. Otherwise it becomes an ad hoc committee, and the board has to approve an ad hoc committee, which is two people. And it has to have a defined period of time in order to comply with the Brown Act.
I don't know if anyone's spoken up for.
Oh, go ahead, Trustee Chang.
I'd be interested in doing the parcel tax if somebody else. I don't know if anyone had interest in representing that.
I'm happy to pass the baton.
Okay.
Okay.
Works.
So we have, let's see, I want to go back over the list.
Did we decide on the equity committee? Or is that?
I would love to kick it off, but I also think that it's important that I not stay there forever if I get to kick it off. Yeah. So I would love to be on it, but with the understanding that I think that it will be important to that committee to have other board members rotate through and hear from the committee as well.
Okay.
So we have Trustee Blakely staying at check. Oh, go ahead, Trustee Berman.
No, that's fine with me.
I'm trying to synthesize our final roll on these and make sure everything's filled. We have the DAC is Trustee Blakely and Trustee Wheeler together still? Or Trustee Chang, did you have interest in DAC? I want to make sure I didn't miss part of the
Not
discussion.
formally. I'll just
Okay.
attend quietly. Not formally.
Okay.
I'm happy to, but unless others want to, that's fine. Along with Ellen.
And this is the conversation we had last year. Trustee Blakely made that comment, and then she was put down as the representative, when in actuality, it's both of us who we would be co-representatives.
So we will have formal co-representatives to DAC, Trustee Wheeler and Trustee Blakely. And then for DLAC, Trustee Berman. Thank
Yes.
you. And then for MVEF, you were also interested in that, Trustee Berman? And then
Yes.
Parcel Tax Committee, Trustee Chang. And then the PTA Council, I would like to continue. Is there no? Okay. The Santa Clara County School Boards Association, Trustee Wheeler will continue. And then for the bond oversight, is it going to be co-representatives or a single representative?
Maybe Trustee Blakey would be fine to represent the board.
I'm happy to do it, and I do like to be involved. So
Okay.
thank you.
All right. I think that is all of our current position.
There's the
And then,
challenge team, which often is a tricky time-wise. I don't know if Trustee Wheeler wants to talk about that a little more.
Well, a little bit. Anybody can attend. There's no representation. And especially now that it's virtual and it's at 8:30 in the morning, it's much easier for anybody to attend other than people who are working like you, Trustee Chang. But anybody can attend. There's essentially no voting. There's comments once in a while, but there's no, I mean, that's just an opportunity for involvement.
And it's one time a month, not two.
Once a month.
and we have regularly had 3 to 5 trustees at
Yeah.
that meeting. It's an incredibly informative meeting. It's usually a Thursday morning.
I'm happy to put my name on there on the challenge team.
So there's no name affiliated with it. Just, I don't even know why this committee is on this list. Anybody can go. There's no representation.
We all get to go, Trustee Berman.
Yeah.
Trustee Chang.
Something similar in that category. I would be interested in actually, I'll talk to Trustee Wheeler about attending the special education meetings as that kind of same, like, it's not an official position, but that's something I'm going to commit to attend those.
I would be interested in investigating, as you both go this year, if there is a role for having a formal board observer to those. I will say that I often feel like I would love to hear more about what's happening in those meetings. Or maybe just in the board updates, there could be some sharing about what's happening at SELPA when either of you go. That would be wonderful.
Yeah, and so that's a committee that has excellent representation from staff. So
Okay.
our special ed director attends those meetings, and she makes reports on behalf of the school district, and then reports out, in a wider venue to everybody about them. So I think, like people were talking about, it's a good committee to observe, and it's a good committee to show that we're interested, but I don't know what value added
Okay.
the trustee would provide.
Thank you. It's a helpful clarification to know that we usually have staff there. That helps. All right. Do we need to make a motion on these appointments, Dr. Rudolph? No? Okay. Thank you, everyone. We will now move on to the approval of our broader agenda for this evening. Would anyone like to make a motion?
I move that we approve the agenda as presented.
Is there a second?
I second.
Okay, on a motion moved by Trustee Blakely and seconded by Trustee Berman, the agenda for the evening has been approved. Before we proceed to item 3, I did want to take a moment and thank you to Trustee Chang for, yes, Trustee Chang.
I think we needed to vote.
Oh,
It's daunting.
I'm
sitting in
so
that chair.
excited. You know, you're right. Okay, thank you. I appreciate all of your help this evening. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Okay. The training wheels are off, people. On a motion moved by Trustee Blakely and seconded by Trustee Berman, the board unanimously approves the agenda for this evening. Before we proceed to item 3, I did want to take a moment. Trustee Chang reminded me that today is the 8th anniversary of the Sandy Hook Elementary School shooting, and 26 people were murdered at the school site by a gunman, 20 children and 6 staff working with those students. So I thought it would be appropriate for us to take a moment of silence as a board to recognize and memorialize that event. All right, thank you, trustees. Now we will move on to item 3 on our agenda. This is an opportunity for members of the public to address the board concerning items on the closed session agenda. If you are participating by Zoom and you have a comment on the closed session agenda, you can raise your hand in the participant window. So you click on participant at the bottom of your screen. It pops out a side menu. There are 3 little dots and you can elect to raise your hand. If you were calling in over the phone, you can also, I believe, press *9 to indicate that you would like to make a comment. I'm going to wait just a moment to give the public an opportunity to raise their hand if they would like to make a comment on this is for the closed session agenda. Okay, it looks like we have 1 member of the public. Miss Sandy Pewitt, you will have 3 minutes to address the board regarding the closed session agenda items.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, and hold on, I think we should have a timer that pops up for you.
While you're doing that, congratulations to our newly elected board members.
Okay, you are all set, Miss Pewitt.
Okay. So hello, I'm Sandy Pewitt. I'm a parent at Mistral and PTA president at Mistral. I've made a number of comments in board meetings and other forums over the past couple of years in which I've encouraged the district and the school board to be more inclusive and engaging with families, and I've definitely seen a ton of improvement. As a brand new parent in the district just 3 years ago, it took me a very, very long time and an incredible amount of work and tenacity to figure out in my Southern dialect how things work around here. I come from another state where nothing like the Brown Act exists, so that was new. And I also learned ways that our district and board had improved significantly, even though we will always have more work to do. I hope that we're noticing, I certainly have noticed during this pandemic, a significant increase in outside-in parent engagement through virtual board meeting attendance at various community check-ins, principal cafecitos, the wonderful parent university offerings this year, etc. I've started kind of calling this user engagement, which is terminology that many of our tech workers may be familiar with, and like the experience of students and families is like with the product, and there's user experience. Anyway, so I want to encourage the Board of Trustees, Superintendent Rudolph, and our incredibly talented and committed district office staff, principals, school site teams to lean in to this increased outside-in family engagement and capture every opportunity to educate us about topics which you'd like to decrease future drama about, from how school board policies work to what the LPAC is, to techniques for supporting early literacy at home in K2 or mental health in adolescents in grades 5 to 8. I think that never in the history of this district have there been such consistently talented communicators in the various district office roles and the principal school site roles and our teachers. I would also wager that there are a significant number of families who are similar to past me 3 years ago, who are new to our district now, who may be joining us in the next 4 years. And we want to make it easier for them to figure out how things work so that they don't show up at our community check-ins and our board meetings yelling at us about things they could have known about before. There are also parents in our community who will decide to run for school board in 2024. An investment in continuing to build a strategic, methodical, district-wide family engagement program that fits into the CDE frameworks that are publicly available, will align with goal area 3 of the strategic plan, increase the general public acumen about our district and schools, which will decrease the number of hours lost into unexpected black holes of community emotion about district actions by increasing the amount of relevant community input, as well as arming more community members with information. Perhaps most importantly, an effective family engagement program can increase equity by enlisting incoming families as partners in improving student outcomes in culturally relevant ways. This is part of our user experience as parents today. I would love to see our user experience continue to improve. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Pewitt. I believe there might have been a little bit of confusion because that sounded like possibly a community comment as opposed to a comment about the closed session agenda. I thought you kept leaning towards actually commenting about closed session, so that's why I let it go. I apologize. I should have interrupted you at the beginning and sent you to the later on community comments. But your comment is duly noted. Thank you. All right, I believe we are now ready to move into closed session, trustees. All right, we are back from closed session, and I would like to report out that settlement agreement in the OAH case number 20200500038 was approved by a unanimous vote. The settlement requires reimbursement funding to student totaling $55,000 and fully resolve students' claims for the 2019-2020 and 2020-2021 school years. All right, we will now move on to item 6, the consent agenda. Is there, Trustee Chang?
Before a motion, there's an item I'd like to pull from the consent agenda.
Okay,
So I'd like to requesting pulling item F, the architectural services for the monument sign relocation.
okay. Are there any other comments, trustees? Trustee Wheeler, you're muted.
Okay, I'd like to move that we approve the consent agenda items all the way through, except for item F.
Second.
Looks like Trustee Blakely seconded. Dr. Rudolph, I apologize. Will you remind me, do we usually take public comment on the consent agenda? Okay, so at this time, we would like to take public comment on the consent agenda. If you would like to participate and you are on Zoom, you can click on the participants button at the bottom of your screen. It will pop out a sidebar where you can click on the 3 little dots at the bottom, and it will give you the option to raise your hand. If you are calling in, you can press *9. It does not appear that we have public comment. We do have a motion on the floor. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Nay. All right, let the record reflect that on a motion moved by Trustee Wheeler and seconded by Trustee Blakely, we have approved the consent agenda but pulled item F for discussion. Yes, Trustee Blakely.
When do we, I procedurally, I don't recall when the items that get pulled from consent get discussed. I was just curious about that.
I think we can do it now, but we can schedule it for later. Is that correct, Dr. Rudolph? So we can go ahead and.
You could do it before the motion and talk about it. You can do it after the motion. You just have to rearrange the agenda, or you can do it under review and action.
Would trustees like to go ahead and discuss this item now?
Yes.
Okay, Trustee Chang.
Oh, thank you. I pulled the item. I'm anticipating this item will pass, and when it passes, as a board member, I will fully support the decision of the board. But I pulled it because I will state that I will be voting against it, and I wanted to say why. I struggled with the idea. I'm committed to the board goals that set about equal facilities and resources for all schools, and I recognize the districts that all other schools have digital monument signs, and this one just happens to be with the city's change, kind of has one that doesn't work where it's located. But the reason I'm going to vote against it is that the previous monument signs in the school districts, and then September 3rd board meeting was equal on that contract was $400,000, $411,000, and this marquee at Vargas would be $57,000. And when I look back at the Mr. T language of the ballot language that starts off with safe and modern classrooms, and then it goes into the next line is art and science labs. My mind as an educator just can't stomach this idea of marquee signs before $57,000 or $411,000 across the district is spent on science and art facilities and equipment. My 16 years, I have actually, in most of my schools I've worked at, have not had digital signs. So it's hard for me to justify whether there really is a pedagogical reason for that, when the trade-off is we could be using that for maker equipment, lab equipment, art equipment, things that are in direct language to the ballot bond. So that's kind of what I'm saying there. And again, the board norms are the board to support whatever passes the board. And I'm fully committed to follow those norms and follow what the board supports in the end. Thank you, President Conley.
Are there any other comments from trustees? Trustee Blakely.
I just had a question. Are these funds spent from Measure T, or is it the last of Measure G to move the sign, or from other sources?
The funds are coming out of Measure T.
They are. Okay. Thank you.
I also have a question. The original signage, that 411,000 that was put up, that was Measure G funding?
Correct.
So it was something that was approved under Measure G by the prior board, and the signs were rolled out across the district, except this one has to be changed. Yes, Trustee Blakely.
Well, I mean, do we have a motion, or are we? I would like to make a comment when it's the appropriate time.
We've already done
We
public
need
comment.
a motion for this separate item.
We need a motion for this separate item, and we've already done public comment for the consent agenda. Would we do public comment again here, Dr. Rudolph?
You could, for the sake of just doing it, since you're debating this one separately.
Okay. This is the time for any members of the public who would like to comment on this discussion. You can raise your hand in the participant window by clicking on participants at the bottom of your Zoom screen, and then on the sidebar that pops up, clicking on the 3 dots and selecting raise your hand. You can also participate by pressing *9 on your phone if you are calling in. It looks like we have one public comment from Miss Sandy Pewitt, so we will allot 3 minutes for this public comment.
Hello, just a quick comment on the digital signage. Mistral's digital signage was installed last year, and I will say that it has been incredibly useful to members of our community, especially because they would put things like, there's a school site council meeting today. It's a public meeting, people can come. There's a principal chat today, public meeting, people need to come. And they would do this, or they actually did it a couple days in advance, and it helped with public awareness of things that we might have missed on our principal newsletters or on the PTA communications. And when you're a busy parent and you're driving in to drop your kid off, it can be really helpful just to have that visual reminder of things that are literally happening at your school that day. And I know I've worked at I was a development officer at an independent school, and we chose, our board and head of school chose to spend like $50,000, which was almost a whole teacher salary, on building a plaza at the entrance of the school, which was banana pants to think about when you were a teacher, that actually really helped our whole school to look more polished, which helped with admissions. So like there are things that may not seem to make as much sense because every school doesn't have it, but at the end of the day, it's about the parent and the family user experience and engagement in the program that the school is providing that allows the the student outcomes to be improved. So that was my comment. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Pewitt. Trustees, is there a motion on this item? Trustee Blakely.
I move that we approve the award of architectural services contract to Dreiling Taronis Architecture for the Vargas Elementary Monument Sign Relocation Project.
I second that.
Okay. All those in favor?
Oh, were we not going to have trustee? Oh, I'm sorry. I wanted to make comments, and I apologize.
Oh, I'm sorry.
The time
So we
I'm
have
getting
the motion.
Okay.
Yes, if you would like to comment, Trustee
May I
Blakely.
make one? Thank you. I just wanted to say it's not always exactly the same thing for every school to get the same thing. And I think the other 10 schools have functioning monument signs in places that make sense, although we may be moving or adding one at Crittenden because the middle field entrance may make more sense. But I think functionally, Vargas deserves to have a sign in a place where it will be visible, you know, by all passersby in the car and such. And we did work with the city for the last several years, you know, working on the plans for Vargas. We wanted them to put a traffic light in, and they said no, and whatever, the traffic people. And so finally, after we had the plans and we installed the sign, and there were, you know, not to mention issues with PG&E and easements, and you have to run power to the thing, we got it all in, and then the city agreed that they would put a traffic signal in. So it's kind of through no fault of the district, this ended up being in just the wrong place. And because I want all of our schools to have, you know, relatively equivalent facilities, I think it makes sense to move the sign. And for that reason, I'm supportive of allocating the funds to move it to a more functional location. So I just wanted to say that.
Are there any further comments? Trustee Chang.
When this passes and we move the sign and so the utility poles are on the way, it will be an interesting test case to see, does the Vargas community feel a noticeable increase in communication? Because they've been operating right now with the utility pole in front of it, and we'll move it now, and they'll have a new better location. So we'll see if it works, and I hope it does, because you know, $47,000 in art and science equipment, those things could be dramatic catalysts for transformative education. So just, I hope that this new moving location does increase communication, because that would be useful to the school community. Thank you.
All right, we have a motion on the floor. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Okay.
Yeah.
On a motion, yes, Trustee Wheeler.
Yeah, I would like to say something now that the discussion and vote has happened, that I really appreciate Trustee Chang articulating his no vote before the vote. This is a board norm of ours, and we often don't have to use it because we often have unanimous votes. But so I'm glad to see that at your first meeting, you modeled this board norm, and I think you did it respectfully. And I also appreciate you also articulating that, you know, now that the motion has passed, that you will support the vote.
Just there's a couple of quick things. We can't use Measure T funds for curriculum specific purposes. They have to be used on actual facilities. So I just want to clarify that. And then I think the second thing is just to put in everybody's mind about this sign that and it's clearly documented, there were clear issues around electric that required for us to have a generator at Vargas for a considerable amount of time because of an issue with the HOA. And all that comes into account as to why the poles were moved at the last minute as a reflection of that, why we had to spend more to do another gas hookup. And so all that needs to be put into the context as to why Vargas' sign is being moved, not just the district is unilaterally deciding to move the sign.
Thank you, Dr. Rudolph. All right, so on a motion moved by, I'm gonna have trouble remembering these things, Trustee Blakely, I'll get there, and seconded by Trustee Wheeler?
Berman.
Trustee Berman, thank you. The board voted 4 in favor of passing this item and 1 opposed. We will now move on to item 7, communications. This is a time for communications from, first, employee organizations within the district. Do we have any representatives of employee organizations tonight? Okay. Do we have any communications from district committees tonight? All right. And do we have communications from the superintendent?
So I just want to note that today we got word that our McKinney-Vento coordinator, Priscilla, is getting recognized by the Santa Clara County County Commissioners for the amount of work that she does with our students. It'll be a virtual event. Actually, I think it happened today, if I'm correct. Ms. Bauer, is that correct? Was it today that she got recognized? Or was it next week?
No, it was today.
It was today. Yes. So super honored for all the work that she does for all of our students, including over the summer. She's done some amazing work. And so we're super excited about that. And I think it's much, much, much deserved. She, as well as a lot of other individuals, are well deserving. I do want to point out just a couple of quick items. Next week, we will start our winter feeding program. We will serve on Monday 2 days. We will do Monday and Tuesdays meals. And on Tuesday, we will do Tuesday through Fridays meals. And we will repeat that again the following week. So again, it's Monday. There you will receive kids can receive 2 meals, anyone under the age of 18. And then the second on Tuesday, we will do the rest of the week's meals. And we do have a couple of holidays that are coming up where staff isn't working. And so that's why we're doing a multi-day feed across the board. Last thing I would say is just that there were 1,221 new cases that were cited by this county of Santa Clara, 103 new hospitalizations, and unfortunately 3 new deaths. I encourage everyone to follow the 3 W's: wear a mask, wash your hands, watch your distance. From everybody, I know we are thinking about the holidays and want to get close to different individuals. But again, I think it's important for us to keep that in mind as we move into the holiday season. So I'll say it one more time: practice your 3 W's, wash your hands, wear your mask, watch your distance, and until we can get past COVID-19. That's it.
Thank you, Dr. Rudolph. We will move on to item 8 now, community comments. This is the time reserved for community members to address the board on items that are not on the agenda. The board and administration welcome this opportunity to listen. However, in compliance with the Brown Act, the board is not permitted to take action on non-agenda items. We will look to the participants window again for public comment. At this time, if you would like to make a public comment at the bottom of your Zoom screen, you can click on participants. It pops out a sidebar. You click on the little 3 dots and it gives you the option to raise your hand. If you're calling in by phone, you can press *9. It appears that we have 1 public comment at this time. You will have 3 minutes. Let's get our timer up for Miss Sandy Pewitt.
Okay, you can hear me. Okay.
Yes.
I'm so sorry. I will not take 3 minutes. I apologize for making my comment earlier at the wrong time. There is an item of litigation that is related to the Brown Act, which is one way in which parents and family and community education and engagement can or could potentially be helpful. But my main theme was about impacting student outcomes and really student outcomes, which is all of our goal in our school district. And the piece of my comment that I cut off at the end, because I'm not going to restate my whole comment, and I did email it in, so it's public record, is that, you know, when real school begins again and the pandemic is over, you know,
This was a comment that you have already made for 3 minutes. We can't allocate
Okay.
extra time for
That's
the
totally
same
fine.
comment at this time. Thank you.
Sorry about that. Thank you.
Sorry.
And so Board President Connolly, one
Yes,
thing
ma'am.
you could recommend to people is for them to send their additional comments to the board in writing.
We would love to see your comments in
Yeah.
writing. I always encourage people to write to the trustees. It definitely helps us.
Yeah.
All right, we will now move on to item 9, review and action. We will start with item 9A, the election to CSBA Delegate Assembly.
All right, this item was placed on the board agenda at the request of a board member, and so I'll turn it over to y'all to discuss the nomination for a representative to enter the election for CSBA.
Trustee Wheeler.
Yeah, so I'm the one who brought this original item forward, and it was, I appreciate all the background material, Superintendent Rudolph, but it was particularly for Trustee Conley. I would like our board to nominate Trustee Conley to be a member of the Delegate Assembly, and this is, you know, a step that needs to happen before she can get on the ballot. So that's my point of view. And when it's time, I would like to move that our board vote for Trustee Conley to be a nominee for Delegate Assembly.
Are there any other board comments or questions? Trustee Blakely.
I'm super supportive. I think Trustee Conley would make an excellent delegate.
And I'll also say that the actual election will happen, you know, in a couple months. You know, it'll be on our agenda, and then there'll be applications from any other applicant in the whole county. So it's going to be competitive. So, you know, fasten your seatbelt.
Are there any other trustee comments? Trustee Chang.
I just have a motion if there are any other comments before that.
Would you like us to take public comment before or after the motion? We usually take public comment before. If there are members of the public who would like to comment on this item, please raise your hand. You can click on the participants button at the bottom of your Zoom screen. Pops out a sidebar with 3 dots. You can click on the 3 dots and select raise hand. Or if you're calling in by phone, you can press *9. We do not appear to have any public comment on this item. I would like to make a comment very quickly before a motion is put forward. I have been working over the last 2 years as a school board trustee for our district, but I've also learned a great deal about the impact that we have as a county and our role in CSBA and the way our California School Boards Association actually lobbies for issues important to our students at the state level. And in the last year, I was a co-founder of the Digital Equity Coalition, and we have advocated at the county and city level across Santa Clara to try and close the digital divide for students. I would really like to continue that work at CSBA as well. And I think that one way to do so would be to be a delegate there, and then put some pressure on the state to solve this problem. All right, is there a motion? Yes, Trustee Chang.
So I have a motion that our Board of Trustees nominates Board Member Demma Connolly to the Delegate Assembly for the 2021 election.
Is there a second? Trustee Wheeler. All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? All right, on a motion moved by Trustee Chang and seconded by Trustee Wheeler, our board has nominated myself to be a candidate for Delegate Assembly. We will now move on to item 9B, the 2020-2021 first interim budget report. And we have Dr. Westover, our Chief Business Officer, to present.
Good evening. With me tonight, I also have Nadia Pongo, who is our Director of Fiscal Services, who will be presenting with me. So this evening, we'll be presenting the 2021 first interim budget report. To connect it back to our strategic plan, Goal 5 is resource stewardship, and we have a desire to have a balanced general fund. However, we also have a board resolution that states that as long as we stay within 17 to 20% reserve level in the third year out, we can have deficit spending in any year up to that third year. A quick review of the differences between unrestricted, restricted, and reserves. So unrestricted, these are funds that we can use for general operations, all ongoing expenses, and we also use it for shortfalls in other funds such as special education, transportation, preschool, and food services. Restricted revenues are not really up to us to how we would like to spend them, and they're meant for specific purposes such as special ed and Title I. We also have reserves, which we use for economic uncertainty and one-time expenses. So looking at our first interim budget report, these reflect our actual data, our revenue and expenses through October 31st, and this is our first formal update to the board this year. It's an action item that's presented to you for review and approval, and then we'll be back in front of you again in March for our second interim. To give the board a little idea of the budget adoption process and kind of where we are. So we always have two years going at once. Right now we're operating in the 2021 year, but we're also looking forward to the next budget year. So we're right now in December at the top of the screen when we present first interim. Coming in January, we'll hear the governor's proposed state budget. In March, we'll be back in front of you to talk about second interim. And then through the spring, things get really busy. And we start watching and seeing what's going to happen. And then in May, the governor presents the revised budget, and we continue to work on our budget. And then we'll come again in front of you in June to talk about our budget for the following year. So all the time we have kind of two roads going, planning for next year and where we are right now. A quick look at the history of our AB growth. As a basic aid district, we very heavily rely on AB growth. So if you look at the thick green line, this is where we are trending right now. Some highlights from the first interim. For the 2021, assessed valuation is at 10.66%. This is as of November 8th, which increases our unrestricted revenues by $398,000. We also collected developer fees at $2.5 million, as opposed to last year's $95,000. Just a quick reminder to the board that the developer fees need to be used to address growth in the district. So we couldn't take this money, for example, and purchase curriculum. It would need to offset the increased student growth that we expect to get from the developments that are occurring. We also have a one-time cost due to AB 2018, which extended the statute of limitations for childhood sexual assault. We have funding our other post-employment benefits of $1.4 million. We also, you'll see on our books that we're showing a $1.2 million home loan. So the superintendent has not taken this home loan out yet, but we need to make sure we account for it for cash purposes.
Good evening and welcome newly elected board members. I would like to speak about the COVID impact on our budget. And this year, COVID had a big impact in our budget. We committed a $2.9 million into our budget this year. Some of the purchases include face masks and face shields, some touchless faucets, cleaning supplies, and soap dispensers. And of course, we have invested a lot in our technology. We have purchased a lot of hotspots and Chromebooks, as well as some online subscription to support distance learning. We are currently projecting to do a contribution for our food service program of $1.1 million, as well as to our preschool program for $784,000. We're setting aside a $1.1 million to support learning paths. Next slide, please. So these are the numbers at first interim budget report. This is our general fund and by unrestricted and restricted program. For unrestricted program, we are projecting a net decrease of $422,018. For restricted programs, we are projecting a net decrease of $1,242,246, with a combined net decrease of $1,664,264, and we still with reserves level of 23.34%, which is a healthy reserve level. And here, this is the multi-year projection. And I'd like to go over a little bit about the differences adopted budget and first interim. At adopted budget, we had somewhat a balanced budget, with revenue equals expenditures, but a lot has happened since adopted budget and first interim. In the revenue portion, we have recognized the revenue from the CARES funds. That's at $3.2 million. At adopted budget in the spring, we knew we were going to get some monies from the federal funding and state, but they had not settled the amount. They were also going to give us the money after July 1st, so we couldn't recognize the funds last year. But we're now bringing these expenses. And just like Dr. Westover already mentioned, the assessed value percent increase, we had projected a 10%, and the assessed value came into a 10.66%. So that brought up $398,000 for the general fund. We also got an additional $237,000 from the local control funding formula. And for expenditures, because we have all these monies from CARES funding, we are booking the expenses on the under expenditure report in the expenditure portion for the one-time expenditures. We are also, once the books close and things settle, we're able to bring back the carryover. That is $1.6 million for carryover that we plan to spend this year. We're also, as we mentioned earlier, $1.4 million for post-employment benefits, and the $1.1 million to support learning paths. We're also increasing some of our expenditures for to support distance learning for online subscriptions and online subscriptions and online resources. That's still 23.34% reserve level. For year 2, we are projecting a net decrease of $1,143,319 with 23.24%. And in year 3, we're projecting a net $3 million decrease, $773,708, with a reserve level of 18.42%. And I'd like to speak about the assumptions at this point in time. We are projecting a 0% AV growth or assessed value. We don't know what may happen in the years out. So we like to be conservative, and we will be continue to forecast the AV growth. As in year 2, the expenditures, we're removing the one-time expenditures that we are accounting for in the current year. And in year 3, we don't have those expenditures, but while we're holding our revenue flat, we still have ongoing expenditures that will continue to increase. For example, a step-in column, health and welfare benefits, as well as retirement expenditures like STIRS and PERS. In year 3, STIRS goes from 16% to 18%. PERS also is projected to go from 23% to 26%. And that is an equivalent of $1.2 million. In year 3, we're still projecting an 18.42%. It's still within our reserve levels.
So some considerations for the future. Assessed value growth is slow. We have an unknown recovery time for the economy and for property taxes, which is why what Ms. Pongo mentioned earlier, that we are being conservative with holding AV growth at 0. And we also have possible ongoing costs of COVID for the district. So next steps, we'll be back in front of you again in January to talk about our audit. We'll also bring the second interim budget report to you at the March meeting, and we'll start the budget development process. Any questions?
Dr. Westover, would you mind stopping sharing your screen? Thank you. Are there questions from trustees? Trustee Berman.
Hi, thank you for the presentation. So I submitted the question about the healthy reserves that we keep year after year so that we can maintain a certain percentage after 3 years. And I am extremely supportive about saving conservatively. I think that it has allowed us to be quick in responding to the needs of our students when COVID happened, and we were able to respond to their needs, and because we had that savings account to help. My question is, and I'm just going to basically repeat the question that I submitted because I think for some it's really helpful to hear for others who may be listening. It is a very conservative number, just from what I've heard from other districts in conferences recently who have a much lower number. And I'm wondering, as we come back, as we return to normal, and we may be presented with students that may have some large learning gaps, and that might play into some of the expenditures that we need to plan for in the next couple of years. Can you just speak to how comfortable are we into dipping a little further into those reserves if there's a need to do so? And maybe you can just explain one more time how we came up with that number of the 17%, 17 to 20% over 3 years, which is where we want to end up.
Absolutely. I think you said a couple of really important things in leading up to your question. One of the reasons it's very important for a basic aid district to keep a higher reserve level is because we are a basic aid district, so our revenue can be quite volatile. So we need to be able to save for times of uncertainty. We also need to save for cash flow because we don't have a steady stream of cash. It's when property taxes come in. So there are months where we're not receiving a lot of income and we need to make payroll. So that's another reason that basic aid districts need to keep a larger reserve level. And the board's levels were set based in conjunction from guidance from school services that looks at kind of the financial health of districts across the state. So it wasn't a number that was invented. It was actually based in what is best practice for a basic aid district. In terms of how important it is that we have these reserves, it has absolutely allowed us to be quick in our response to COVID. Some districts, because they don't have the cash balance that we had, they needed to wait for the CARES funds to actually arrive because they didn't have the cash. We knew that we had the reserves, so we said, whatever we need to purchase now, purchase it. And that was a benefit to us. If we need to move forward and do other things to support kids when we return, I think that's also a possibility, but I think it's probably a discussion that the board needs to have on direction. But we do have reserves to allow us to do that.
Thank you.
Trustee Blakely.
I had a question. It wasn't so much in what you presented, but in some of the materials, talking about the fact that we are, over 300 kids down, or 200, and the enrollment has declined somewhat significantly this year. And my assumption is a lot of that is due to COVID, families leaving the district either temporarily or long-term. But do we have any sense of what to anticipate, like assuming things get back to normal during the 2021 calendar year, where our enrollment numbers might be?
I think it's pretty tricky for next year. I think everyone's guessing on what the situation is going to be. I think long-term, we still anticipate to see growth in our districts, which is an outlier from the rest of the state. So I think long-term, we're planning for student growth. I don't have a good guess for the beginning of next year yet.
Okay, that's fair. I just was curious if we studied that, or, heard from people that are homeschooling now that want to come back or that sort of thing.
Trustee Wheeler?
Yeah, can I add that to your answer, Dr. Westover? What's happened around the state also is younger kids are staying out. Parents are holding younger kids out. So there's, a lot of the decline in enrollment is in the early grades. So like kindergarten and first grade, and that's happening everywhere. So can we anticipate that those kids will come back? My expectation is that they will. And then, the $1 million question is, what's going to happen if we get universal pre-K? But, that grade level of kids, I think, will be returning.
Trustee Chang?
As basic aid, if our enrollment does continue to drop, does that have any direct meaningful impact on our revenue?
It's a good question. So materially, no, because we're not driven by student enrollment.
And a question about, in the presentation, it talked about the board approval to kind of be spending using the reserve between that 17, as long as we're above that 17-20% reserve level. And the chart shows that in that year 3, has that 18.42, so it falls in that range. I know these are based on conservative estimates. What is, so even with a conservative estimate, do we anticipate that we will likely need to make cuts that year 3 when we get into that 17 to 20% reserve range?
I think that's a really tough question right now. Right now, not looking at cuts on the horizon at all. A lot of it greatly depends on what the state decides to do over the next couple of years. So every year, things are shifting. And if you look back at kind of our budget predictions, we're always in that third year out. We've stayed within that range. So I think it's much too early to talk about any cuts. We're very fortunate that we don't have to yet.
So I also had a question. I'm sure you've seen the report on the governor's budget that the Legislative Analyst's Office put out recently. And they keep talking about a dramatic improvement in the revenue estimates for the state, but there's almost a windfall beyond the projections. And a lot of it seems to be tied to the tech industry kind of booming during COVID. Do you see that affecting our second interim budget? I know that the governor, hasn't actually put forth his budget yet. But what are you hearing from your colleagues?
Yeah, in terms of when you'll see things in our budget, we can't reflect anything until it's official. Hearing good things, I think we're happy. In terms of impact on our district, because we do get the majority of our revenue from property taxes, it won't be as great as other districts, but some of the funding we will see increase slightly. So I think something that it's really positive for the state is that the deferrals that were in place this year, they're hoping to get rid of the deferrals next year, which will help a lot of districts out quite a bit.
Thank you. Are there any further questions from trustees? Trustee Chang?
I believe in Ms. Pongo's presentation, there was a slide about the pod funding for the $1 million. Is that for spending already done, or is that for the upcoming pod expansion pod program that the board discussed previously?
So for the pod program, it's already started. So some of it is money that we've spent already, and some of it is ongoing towards the end of the year.
And is that enough to is that enough for the rest of the school year, or is that $1 million for a very set time frame?
It's enough for the rest of the school year.
Thank you.
Are there any further questions? All right, we will move on to public comment. If you are a member of the public and you would like to comment on this item, you can click on the participants tab at the bottom of your Zoom screen, and it will pop out a sidebar with 3 little dots. If you click on the 3 little dots, it will give you the option to raise your hand. If you are calling in over the phone, you can press *9 and that should raise your hand. We do not appear to have any public comment at this time. trustees, do you have comments that you would like to share?
I'm grateful that we're in the position we're in. That's my comment. Thank you for the presentation.
Trustee Chang?
Yeah, I'm comfortable with the spending down our reserve. I would say, you know, when I was on the board when we were building up the reserve, and there's a lot of controversy about reserve spending back then, or what wasn't spent on the reserve back then. But when I look at this 2022 to 23 kind of this projected conservative estimate of a $3.7 million deficit, like I recognize it took many years to build this reserve to this giant size, and we just have to watch because that's spending down pretty quickly, the reserve to where we reach that board decision that we can't get beyond because we're at that 17 to 20% remaining reserve. I really admire how clear the district budget charts are when I think back 5 years ago. So it's the credit to Dr. Westover and her staff. These charts are much more user-friendly, and the community comments made earlier about a lot of parents wanting this user-friendly feedback. So really credit to there. You know, the one area where I submitted a question to, and it's in the Q&As for the trustees, the one area where I still just don't understand how it works, and welcome in the next board report, or if it's just on a side, is on the budget category, the 5800 on professional services and general operating expenses. It's such a large part of the budget, and it's grown so much over the years. I just welcome understanding more, and the answers, thank you for the answers that were provided on that question when I submitted it, but the answers provided still don't add up to the number that's on the report. So like, for me, I would welcome seeing, like, so if we have projected for this year, 11.5 million for reserve and for unrestricted and restricted for category 5800. That you know, that's like 10% of our budget. I welcome knowing what is the breakdown for that and have that number add up. I think it would be useful for the public, and I think it would help dispel any kind of concerns I have and the public may have. Thank you.
I think staff would ask what more explanation outside of the spread, what was already provided to you that you would be looking for.
The spreadsheet, the numbers added up to 1 million for the breakdown. But then when I look at the reports given to us, the unrestricted was at 3 million and the restricted at 8.4. So I just had a hard time kind of corresponding those amounts to equal out.
I think what we were trying to make sure is like we pulled what was spent as opposed to what was budgeted, because our prediction for this year was really tricky. So what we did is everything that had gone out the door is what we pulled, and then it's by function. So you could see if it was categorized for instruction, it has the number of what has been sent out to people for instruction. And then maybe let me ask for some clarification so I can make sure to get the information that you need. For example, specifics of like under that instruction category, what does that mean? Like what specific vendor, is that what you're asking for?
You know, because that title is such a catch-all, right? So 5800 in the, like on the report given to us, you know, it starts off, you know, professional consulting services and operating expenses, right? And that captures so many things. And on the California Department of Education's on the EdData website, on that category, we look larger than other districts. We look 3 times larger than Sunnyvale and 6 times larger than Evergreen per pupil spending on that category. And I know that we must have like really valid answers for all of them. I just don't have them, and I'm curious about them. It's kind of like, why do we spend more on that category relative to other districts? And just the breakdowns, I think, could dispel any questions I have and any questions the public might have. If they looked at that percentage, it just stands out, right? It's like we spent 300% above the state average. The why is just on that particular one.
Yes, I would pose a question to the trustees that if considering the gains that we have had academically compared to the competitors where we are outspending them, is there a concern about how we are spending the money, considering that the results are clear, that it is improving student outcomes? Or I guess we're just trying to understand what the request is, because we're pretty transparent in terms of how we present the budget and all the documents that are actually sent out. But we do spend a lot of money in terms of, for instance, as it was put in the questions, we spend a lot of money to make sure that our teachers can provide science in the RTI program. The RTI program is unique, probably across the nation, but it does require us to provide a considerable amount of professional development to our teachers in order to provide expert science lessons in the response to instruction program. So if you could help us to sort of understand what the concern would be, maybe we would be able to address the need here.
I have no question about the value. I just what is it spent on? So no value judgment whatsoever. Just kind of like, if this is a $11 million budget item, what are the big chunks that are going under there, and kind of having those numbers match without not implying that it's being misused or anything like that, or not even implying. I mean, just the numbers is all I'm. That was my question. Yeah, thank you.
Yes, you're absolutely correct. That object code 3 does has a lot of categories, including like online subscriptions, online services, consultants, firms that we can foster locally and we have to outsource. It includes field trips. It includes so I believe that what we shared with you was the actuals up to October 31st, but I believe you like to see what the budget amount broken down by category, because it is a lot of categories. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. We'll
It's
do.
efficient. If that's not taxing, if Dr. Rudolph, if that takes a lot of work, I recognize that's something that requires the board approval. So.
Maybe, Chris, to help answer your question, but also prevent maybe 3 or 4 hours of work for one of our team members, could we look at the actuals? Because sometimes with budget, like we have a placeholder, but we don't know if it's going to be spent yet. So can we look at the actuals for this year as kind of what's been spent, and then break it down by category for you that way? And so you can see, for example, this went towards special ed IAs, this went towards special ed contractors, because that's also in that bucket. A lot of direct student services.
Dr. Westover, whatever is efficient, and if there's anything I'm asking for that is going to take extensive time of you or your staff, I myself don't have the authority to do that, and that would be something that would be up to the board. So if any of these questions I ask is going to take you or your staff more time, that is not a request I'm making individually.
Okay.
Are there further comments? Yes, Trustee Blakely.
I just also want to be cognizant of the amount of time. And so if you, when you get into it, you discover it's going to take many hours, my preference would be that you hold off and then come back and see what is appropriate in terms of going forward. Because I know you have a lot on your plates. So thank you. I want Trustee Chang to understand that I also want you to get your jobs done and not, be up until midnight every night. So
I think the telling item will be second interim, when you see similar to what Dr. Westover said, because it's closer to the end of the year and it has an accounting for how we have spent funds across the board. And that will be more indicative of how the district is spending money within these particular categories. It's hard to look at what we budget versus what we actually allocate, what we actually spend, because of we often put placeholders and we put large budget amounts, and then we reclaim that money at the end of the year. So for instance, we know for a fact that while Chief Academic Officer Bauer's department has spent more on instructional supplies, you will see less money being spent from the school sites on instructional supplies, because school sites are relying on the district to provide materials across the board. And so the reconciliation in second interim is actually where you'll get more information, as opposed to what we have spent over the summer up until the period that covers first interim.
Thank you, Dr. Rudolph and Dr. Westover. And Ms. Pongo, are there further comments from the board? I would just like to add that I appreciate our conservative budgeting as well. I still vividly remember the discussion in April when we had moved to shelter in place, and our board made the decision then that based on our existing budget, we were willing to drop our reserve below the 17% threshold to be able to provide a Chromebook for every child. And we would not have been able to draw on those funds if they did not exist. We are fortunate that that money has been replenished through the federal government. Hopefully we will see more relief coming from the federal government that will impact our state as well as our school district budgets moving forward. That being said, would anyone like to make a motion on this item? This is an action item. Yes, Trustee Blakely.
I move that the board approve the 2020-2021 first interim budget report as presented.
Is there a second? Trustee Chang.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? On a motion made by Trustee Blakely and seconded by Trustee Chang, the board has unanimously approved the first interim budget report. We will now move on to review and action item number 9C, which is the budget overview for parents.
So the LCFF budget overview for parents is typically part of our budget adoption process, but because of COVID this year, it was decoupled from that and is now, because of Senate Bill 98, attached to first interim. So this is what we're showing you today. The intent of the LCFF budget overview for parents was to make it an easy way for parents to understand the school district's budget. So this is the budget overview for parents. I popped it into a slide so it was easy for us to talk through.
And I will go over, thank you, Dr. Westover, and I will go over a little bit of the numbers and percentage on this graph. The Mountain View Wisman School District total revenue is projected to be $89.8 million. Of that, 73%, which is 65,472,106, is from the local control funding formula. And of that 65 million, 3% is supplemental and concentration grant, which is $3 million. So the Learning Continuity Plan replaces the Local Control Accountability Plan, or also known as the LCAP for 2021. And that actually gives districts the opportunity to plan and support high quality education, as well as social emotional support and nutrition needs for students during COVID-19. Learning Continuity Plan is projecting to spend $8.6 million. And of those $0.6 million, we are projecting to spend $4.7 million on students of high need students, which are English learners, low income, and foster kids.
And then something also to note is we historically have always spent more than the state minimum. This is looking back at our 1920 school year for our increased or improved services for high needs students. So our LCAP had originally planned to spend $4.7 million, and we ended up spending $4.1 million. And this was due to one, school closing and us providing services in different ways. So for example, we didn't hold an in-person summer school, but summer support was offered to students. There were some things that were cost savings for us, but we just provided it in a different way. So this is the budget overview for parents. Any questions?
does not appear that we have trustee questions at this time. If there are, oh, go ahead, Dr. Westover.
Something I forgot to mention is we also have the infographic that we uploaded with the board presentation. And at the beginning of each budget, we also have a budget-friendly kind of booklet that we put together that I think is does something similar to what the LCFF budget overview for parents do, but it's just much more about our district.
Thank you. If there are no trustee questions, we will move to public comment. If you are a member of the public and would like to comment on this agenda item, you can click on the participants tab at the bottom of your Zoom window. It will pop out a sidebar and there are 3 little dots. If you click on the 3 dots, they will let you select raise hand. If you are calling in over the phone, you can press *9 and that should also raise your hand. And that is how we will know you would like to comment. We do not appear to have public comments at this time. Trustees, do you have further comments on this item? All right, it does not appear that we have further comments. I would just like to say thank you again for your presentations, Dr. Westover and Ms. Pongo. It is thanks to your stewardship that we are in the situation that we are in with our budget. And I think I can speak for all of us in saying that we appreciate your conservative and realistic estimates that help us plan for the future. We will now move on to item 10, review and discussion. This is a presentation on Walden West and the Nature Bridge program options for the 2020-2021 school year. Oh yes, Trustee Blakely.
Yeah. I think we were going to say the same thing. It's at least, I think we have to approve that budget overview for parents.
I'm so sorry. Thank you. I'm working on it. I'm excited. We're on schedule and I just want to keep moving. All right. Would anyone like to make a motion on this item before we move on?
I'd like to make a motion. This is my first one, so I hope I say it correctly. I'd like to make a motion that we approve the budget overview for parents as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, on a motion moved by Trustee Berman and seconded by Trustee Blakely, the budget overview for parents was unanimously approved. We will now move on to our presentation on Walden West and the Nature Bridge program options for the 2020-2021 school year.
Great. Thank you, trustees. I'm happy to be here tonight to share with you information on these 2 programs, Nature Bridge and Walden West. So as always, we align to our strategic plan. And in this case, looking at closing achievement gaps is more than just academic. We want to provide all of our students with high quality extended learning opportunities. And Walden West and Nature Bridge are some of the students' favorites. And they say this multiple times in opportunities, over the course of the time here in Mountain View. In a typical year, our 5th grade students have the opportunity to attend a 4-day, 3-night session at one of the Walden West camps, either the Saratoga or the Cupertino camp. And the students live together in cabins and learn in an outdoor classroom. We fund the program as a district, and parents do donate, but we cover the cost of the student fees, the transportation, and the staff stipends. And in a regular year, it costs us about $120,000 to send all of our 5th graders to Walden West. For Nature Bridge, our 8th grade students have the opportunity to attend a 4-night, 5-day session in Yosemite National Park, exploring the valleys and meadows and forests. Again, we fund this program, less parent donations. And it costs us a little over $200,000 a year to make sure our 8th graders get this program. So last year with school closure, unfortunately, Bub was the one 5th grade class that did not get to attend science camp because they were scheduled at the end of March after school closed. All of our 8th grade students were able to attend Nature Bridge in Yosemite because they went in the fall. And of course, this year students are not attending either program due to the pandemic. So some possibilities have come forth. Like I mentioned, the 5th grade and 8th grade trip are highlights for our students. We hear this time and time again in 8th grade speeches, 5th grade promotion ceremonies. And if we're going to offer something, we would want students, all of our students, to have the opportunity to participate. Walden West is offering some alternative in-person programming, but COVID restrictions would make it impossible for us to send our 5th graders. The cohort size is small. Kids can't be enrolled in another program like a support pod. We have transportation challenges because we're not transporting kids this year. And I think that due to where we are right now, I think a lot of parents may opt out. But Walden West and Nature Bridge are offering virtual programs for students. So for Walden West, 5-day program, not the same as being in Walden West, but there's 1 hour daily live lessons. And then they also provide asynchronous lessons, science journals. They're providing a virtual campfire experience. They're singing songs during the day, during their programming. They're going to do an end of program closing ceremony. And these programs will be offered in January through May. And teachers have some flexibility in how they schedule them during the distance learning day. The cost is fairly minimal compared to what we usually spend, about $500 a classroom, somewhere in the neighborhood of $12,000 for our 5th graders to participate in this program. Nature Bridge has a program called Yosemite Sense of Place, 3 60-minute interactive sessions to explore Yosemite National Park. The programs are offered February through May, and the cost is $375 per class, somewhere in the neighborhood of just over $7,000. Just some things to consider. If we, moving forward with these programs, would allow our 5th and 8th grade students to have access to a program during the regular school day, so it wouldn't be something outside. So all kids would have access. We need to remember, of course, that the virtual program does not replace an in-person experience, but it is something, and we're not going to make everybody happy. Nature Bridge right now is short-staffed, and they really want to work with us, but they're not guaranteeing that they can accommodate us. Their staff is currently furloughed. They're coming back on January 11th, and they've agreed to meet with me on the 11th to try to confirm programming options for this spring. So next steps, we're moving forward with scheduling programs. We'll continue to look for alternate solutions for our 8th graders in case Nature Bridge can't accommodate our middle schools, and we'll communicate our plans moving forward. So with that, I would be happy to answer questions.
Thank you. Trustee Wheeler.
Yeah, so my recollection is at both of these camps, the 5th grade camp and the 8th grade camp, our students are at these places with students from other schools and other parts of the state. So not only do they have the outdoor experience, they have the experience of getting to know a wider group of students. So if we do these virtual camps, will there be a mechanism for that kind of friend building?
Not to my understanding. And I will say that at sometimes they do mix with students, sometimes they do not. It just depends on the week that they choose and how the numbers work out for both programs. But at this point, it's really scheduled based on a section or a class size.
Are there further questions? Trustee Chang.
I recall the district has been pursuing to see how to bring PE back on campus and looking at that. And if the district gets permission to bring PE back on campus, is there, will that create room for possible like local kind of outdoor education experiences, whether it be taking small groups to San Antonio or Foothill, or within that PE waiver, does that open a possible door for some local excursions?
The PE waiver itself does not, because we would have to apply. We have to apply specifically for the fitness PE program. So if we wanted to do different things, we would have to apply separately. We have had some conversations with the Environmental Nature Collaborative Their programs are very much limited this year because, again, we're not sending our 4th and 5th graders out on field trips. We are only sending them virtually. We have talked to them if things change, if there were some possibilities to offer that. But again, it's all going to depend on situation and whether or not we would be approved to bring programs on site.
Yes, Trustee Chang.
The virtual experiences, do we know if they if part of what they're envisioning is like providing kids like any like kits of kind of like offline activities? Like I know like some of these really popular like kind of like after school science programs have been providing like boxes of things so it's not just all computer time. Do we know if there's like an offline component?
So for Nature Bridge, I do not know if there's an offline component. For Walden West, yes, they provide some supplies and instructional materials, which we have to arrange to pick up at the camp.
Yes, Trustee Berman.
So it sounds like there are experts that come and teach the students about the outdoor education component, and then there are asynchronous lessons. So if we would commit to a contract, do the teachers then commit to following the plan for the week and sort of satisfying the requirements for the program on their side?
Essentially, yes. So they're committing to an hour of online live programming a day, and then they're provided with some additional activities that they can assign to kids as asynchronous lessons that they can do that correlate to the lesson that they had during the day.
Ms. Bauer, I had a question about living classrooms. I know they had been looking at doing some outdoor activities. Is that something that we're looking at?
Yep, I have a program plan for them, and my goal was to try to work my way through this process for Rhythm and Moves. And then as I go through that, then I can also then do the same for Living Classroom. They had staff and a program plan all ready to go. Their program is definitely won't serve the capacity of kids that the Rhythm and Move program does, but it is another option. Yes.
Thank you. And last I heard, the county had not updated their waiver process yet.
They just did on Friday. And so that's been my work most of the day today.
Good news. Are there further questions from trustees? Yes, Trustee Chang. Oh, you were muted, Trustee Chang.
Yeah, thank you. Well, with either of these programs, do teachers need to still provide like the same level of supervision, or do teachers kind of get a little break, or maybe this might be even a little more work for teachers? Where does it pan out for the teachers?
We're not anticipating it being more work, but the teachers do have to be present because the educators are not certificated.
If there are no further questions, we will move to public comment. If you are a member of the public and you would like to comment on this item, you can click on the Participants tab at the bottom of your Zoom window. It will pop out a sidebar where you can click on the 3 dots and select Raise Hand. If you are calling in, you can press *9. We do not appear to have any public comment on this item. Trustees, do you have comments? Yes, Trustee Blakely.
It's not the same thing as going away to science camp or Yosemite, sadly. I mean, I don't see a way to replicate that, but I'm glad we're at least providing a taste of the experience. And I'm hopeful that with Walden West, they'll be able to fit us in. So thank you for looking into this.
Trustee Chang.
I just like want to take this moment to say like, this 5th grade and 8th grade program is such a magical, unique experience to this district of what in a typical year. And I just think like it's such a great thing we do. And recognizing that the virtual won't be that same, I wonder those. Well, I really hope we do continue to work with them in any capacity. I think anything we can preserve is good for the kids. But I wonder if this now outdoor educators can have more creativity if they weren't expected to try to do something so authentic to what they would have gone virtually, right? For example, if instead of trying to recreate Yosemite, if they were just given, okay, you know, you have this bucket of time with the kids and recognize what's the environment the kids are in. Maybe that means they can do something building a tent in their house or something like that, or in their yard, or in their, in the living room. Or I just I wonder if they were given a different frame of, don't try to recreate, because you won't, right? So don't try to recreate Yosemite, but just do something amazing when it comes to nature and outdoor education and outdoor skills with the kids. Could be really magical.
Trustee Berman, I thought I saw your hand up.
Yep, I just want to echo what Trustee T. Blakely mentioned about, I know it's not the same program, but thank you. I appreciate you bringing forth something, an alternative during this time of learning from home and distance learning. My heart really goes out to all those students and families that were really counting on this and won't have that experience for this school year. And I know that these cohorts of students will really need that bonding time next year. So I hope we can be really creative about those cohorts of students. Well, I guess it's all our cohorts of students of what they'll need to bond with one another when we get back to in-person learning. But I definitely appreciate you bringing this program forth so that they can get a little taste of what that experience would have been.
Trustee Chang.
I want to make a plug for it. In the public documents in the Q&A for the district, one of the questions was linked a report to Green Schoolyards of America. Green Schoolyards of America is an organization that works with different naturalist organizations across the country. It's based out of Berkeley, that did a great report on how school districts can try to envision ambitiously about how to have in this pandemic expand outdoor education. Everything from providing more outdoor education that's on school sites to like doing this outdoor learning on in your fields, to your parks, to your local reserves. We are blessed to have so many of all those. So if anyone has the time and interest, that report that's on the Google Doc to the board trustees document that's public, that's the Schoolyards report, which is a really interesting read. Thank you.
I would like to make a comment. So I really appreciate your work, Ms. Bauer, looking into ways to continue partnering with these organizations. I know that they benefit our children significantly when they're in person. I worry about the restaurants down the street. Will these types of programs survive this, pandemic?
Yeah.
And I think that we have a role to a certain extent by participating in the virtual programming that they're able to offer. We can't dictate what the organizations do, but if it matches with some of what we want our students to have access to in a virtual format, I think that we can also support kind of the long-term viability of these programs surviving this time, so that, next year or the year after, it's going to take time to get a vaccine for children. We haven't even really started testing in children yet, but so that in the future we can send students to these opportunities because they still exist and the staff were supported and their programmatic mission was supported. So thank you for doing the work on this. All right, if there are no further comments from trustees, do you need more direction than that, Ms. Bauer, or okay?
Nope, we are good to go. We are already actually scheduling with Walden West as we speak.
All right, thank you very much. We will now move on to item 11, board updates. Are there any board updates? Trustee Wheeler.
Yeah, I have what may be a holiday cheer kind of update. So one of the things that we love about living in Mountain View is all the collaboration among various groups. And I recently learned about I think a wonderful form of collaboration. I emailed Dr. Rudolph about it and he suggested that I share it with all of you. So it's kind of complicated, so stick with me. So we talked about Challenge Team earlier. So Gay Kraus is the director of Challenge Team. And every year she organizes something called Champions for Youth Breakfast. And at the Champions for Youth breakfast, it's been my role for many, many years to go to a local florist and ask for centerpieces. And we've got this wonderful local florist. Her name is May Sue at Fleur de Lis Floral Shop on Castro. So May every year donates these small centerpieces for Challenge Team Champions for Youth. So I know May real well from, my collaboration with her. And she told me a couple months ago about some outreach that she had done with a bub school parent that she knew to try to see if, that teacher's students could write little notes to people in nursing homes locally. And then May would donate flowers to accompany those notes to go to the people in those nursing homes. So, and the teacher's name at Bub is Erica Cow. So Erica Cow followed up on that with May. And, all these months later, I got these wonderful photographs of smiling people with, just hundreds of flower bouquets, that were going to, people in nursing homes through this wonderful teacher at Bub and through the collaboration of all of us. So that's a nice holiday cheer kind of story that I wanted to share with all of you.
Thank you, Trustee Wheeler. Are there any other trustee updates? Trustee Chang?
Just curious what the process would be for board members to share their insights from the California School Board Association conference. I know in previous years, board members sometimes would email out notes and things. I thought in particular, the keynotes this year, I thought really reminded me of some of the really special things about our district and our community. So Leslie Odom Jr., when he said that, try to make your wherever you're at as diverse as it can get. I thought about our district and how both from the board down to the staff that Dr. Rudolph has hired to the community, I feel like that really resonated with what Leslie Odom Jr. said. And then the Hattie Partavi, the CEO of Code.org, talking about computer science being the leading edge to solving issues of equity. And I thought that both those talks in particular resonated locally, but I don't know what the board's process was for other people to share what they attended in.
So typically during items for future agendas, we would request, at a future meeting for trustees to report out about, one or more meaningful sessions that they attended at the convention. And I would support doing that again this year. So, in some meeting in January or February, everybody would get like 5 minutes. And, it shares the learning that we all experience, and it shares with the community the value of our attending this conference.
I'm wondering if it might be something that, because our retreat is going to be recorded this year, if it's something that gets folded into the retreat. I haven't looked at what the outlay of our January and February meetings will be, so what the time amounts would be, but I wonder if that might also be a meeting option where it could be shared depending on how busy the different January, February meetings are.
So I would leave that to that suggestion to Dr. Rudolph to see,
Okay.
What kind of planning goes on. In my mind, I can't imagine it happening at the retreat, because the retreat is normally so stuffed with information and conversation. I think it would be really hard for my brain to shift to, and hey kids, here's what I thought convention. But, and I don't know what the agendas are going to be like for January, February. So, that may be why you're volunteering this.
It would be best to put it on the 7th, the first board meeting, and then because the second one will be talking about data from reopening as well as just sort of a conversation about reopening. And so that probably will be a lengthy presentation compared to the 7th, which will be right after the break. And it's a pretty light agenda as I just looked on the matrix right now. So if the board wants that on there, I just need a affirmation of, looks like 2 more people. And
Yes.
And we have until January 31st to watch any of the sessions that we would like from CSBA. It's all available to us online, except for
Plenaries.
the big general sessions were not recorded. I think probably because those speakers are paid significant amounts for their work and labor. So the CSBA does not record and share those. But all of the other sessions are available for us to go back and learn from. Yes, Trustee Chang.
But I do have a bootleg of Leslie Odom Jr. that I recorded from my class. If anyone,
Trustee Chang, we're not going to take advantage of people's labor without paying them.
That's true.
Especially
powerful speech done by Leslie Odom Jr.
Especially Black actors in the public sphere. So I would like to add an update before we move on. You all have heard about Reach Potential Movement, which has partnered with parents in our community to provide a food pantry at the Mistral Castro Latham preschool site and has expanded to serving McKinney-Vento students from multiple other schools in our district. So Reach Potential Movement and Malia Perez were also awarded an honor from the Santa Clara County Board of Supervisors today. They were awarded the President's Medal for exemplary service during the COVID-19 pandemic. And, you know, along with our own internal staff who have been recognized, I wanted to make sure that we recognized Reach Potential Movement and Malia Perez for their outstanding commitment to our community and all of the work they have done to support our families and continue to do. All right, we will, if there are no further board updates, we will move on to item 13. No, excuse me, item 12, items for future agendas. It sounds like we have already approved one. Are there any other items for future agendas? Yes, Trustee Chang.
Just clarifying question about the board bylaws I was reading through. So is our process now that items for future agendas are previously, prior to board meetings, submitted to Nancy, and then as a one sentence, and then so
items for future agendas that are not already kind of being driven by the district office and board as a whole are usually presented here in this agenda item and then have to be supported by a majority of the board to be added as a future agenda item. If that is my understanding correct, Trustee Wheeler?
Yeah.
And Dr. Rudolph, yes.
Yeah, we will need to, because the board has sort of deviated from the process that was set forth when it was formalized. So we'll need to update the actual board policy to reflect the more casual approach that the board uses to approve. But typically you just, this is the moment you'll say it, and three of you just need to agree that it's placed on. And I do want to add that at the next meeting also, MVPD will be presenting for an update for police, which was the request of the board.
So does that mean we should not follow that 2015 bylaw on the submitting the one sentence to Nancy?
It sounds like we need to update the bylaw because that hasn't been the practice of the board, at least for the 2 years that I've been on the board.
Yeah, but it's probably been about 3 years. So typically what's occurred is that right at this moment, if there is someone who wants an item that be added to the agenda, you all just have a quick dialogue about whoever's presenting says, here's what I'm looking for, this is why. And then the rest of the board sort of makes it under determination about whether or not this is something that can be added in a report, sent separately, or whether or not the board can, or if it's an item that the trustee is interested in and doesn't require staff time, then, you know, we'll put it on and then I'll just turn it back over to you, similar to the nomination for the delegate for CSBA. I just had to get the information and then we put that back on, but that was a request of, I think, Trustee Wheeler to make sure that that occurred. So I hope that clarifies the process.
Trustee Blakely.
Sorry, I think on one or two occasions while I've served on the board, somebody mentioned something and the rest of us didn't really quite understand what exactly they were looking for. So we asked them to flesh it out a little more and come back at the next meeting before we approved it. But that was the rare exception.
That has happened to me, I can confirm. But it's a good process. I think it's worked well. Yes, Trustee Chang.
An item that may be actually already in the plans from what Dr. Rudolph mentioned about the discussion of distance learning and reopening and what next steps regarding, based on the condition of what's going on. Looks like it's coming in January. Is part of that also an update on the work done with the digital learning gap and kind of the piloting by Mr. Acker? And is that rolled into something coming up soon for the?
We haven't started the proof of concept yet. It won't be installed until January. And so as soon as Director Aker has more information about the process, we'll bring it back to the board, but it probably won't occur until February or March. So I believe we're waiting on installation and a couple other items.
Are there any further future agenda items? All right, we will move on to item 13, our future board meeting dates. We have upcoming meetings in 2021 on January 7th, January 21st, February 4th, and March 4th. We will also be scheduling a retreat for the board as soon as possible to kind of orient our new team and talk about our work moving forward together, which I'm very excited about. And so those dates should hopefully come out soon. Yes, Trustee Blakely.
I'm just wondering, are you anticipating that that would take place on a Saturday or a different evening, or do we even know yet?
I have a conversation on Wednesday, and at that point, I will get the dates and sort of understand what the amount of time is. And then right after that, I think Trustee Conley and I talk Friday. And so I would suspect by the end of the week, we should have some dates that will occur and we can go from there.
Thank you.
And of course, Trustee Conley will meet with the facilitator and we'll set up sort of the direction of the meeting too.
All right. I would like to thank everyone for tonight and congratulations to all of our new and newly re-elected board members. It's a pleasure. I'm excited about this team. And, I was rushing through this a little bit, but I'll slow down next time. But at 8:54 p.m., I would like to adjourn this meeting of the Mountain View Wisman School Board. Everybody stay safe, wash your hands, watch your distance, and wear a mask.
And enjoy your holidays safely.
Yes.
Happy holidays,
Enjoy your
everyone.
holidays.
Happy holidays.